of the day from a constitutional basis, biblical basis, right versus wrong. Number here is 888-248-2046. I'm going to go into something here. Again, challenge my challenged brain against something said by the Tennessee Attorney General on House Bill 0589. It's not that they turned it down, that it was defeated in committee. That's not the issue. The issue is whether or not there's subterfuge, well meaning, maybe intended, well intended, possibly. There's literally a spirit of subterfuge happening that's occurring in the Tennessee legislature and its government and its appointed attorney general. I think it's a spiritual matter. So we'll see. This Constitution, he's quoting here the Constitution, Article 6, the Supremacy Clause, and the laws of the United States, which shall be made pursuant thereof, and all treaties made, hear that? All treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, not the federal welfare programs, shall be the supreme law of the land. So it's got to have a treaty, or it's got to have a law of Congress that is there within their powers in Article 1. But look what is cited by the let's just here's what he said. The United States Supreme Court has found that this provision entrusts the field of foreign affairs and international relations solely to the federal government. It's to the United States. Tennessee is part of the federal government, folks. So it reserves it to the president and the Congress. No, the president, he signs on treaties, but they're ratified by the Senate. And then Congress, therefore, would make laws when it's in their power to say what the states will do. Now, look, here's an example that was set that's completely off point. Again, it's an example of sophistry, including a factual statement that ultimately leads to a falsehood in understanding. He cited Haynes versus David Witz, invalidating a state probate statute. Now, here's a whole different issue, completely different issue. In history, in law, under the common law, foreigners have no inheritance rights under the common law. And we inherited the common law. It was invoked by those who founded our nation. And under the common law, you have no inheritance rights. If you die and you've got a family member who is given their allegiance to Germany, then they can't under the law of this land inherit property. But because of a treaty, and this was true right when the country started, you realize that there were people who went to England who would have had property rights under inheritance had they stayed here. But because of their political persuasion or whatever their situation, they went back to England and maintained their citizenship as an English subject rather than a subject or one of the people of the United States. So they abdicated that advantage. So they lost those inheritance rights. So that was a conflict between the two countries that was resolved by treaty. So treaties were made that gave Congress the power through that treaty to say, those of you who are in treaty with us, nation, you are a friend nation to us. You will have inheritance rights, but it's got to be expressly determined by treaty, ratified by the states through the Senate. See, the Senate, senators represent literally the government of the states. That is the state's perspective. It's not the people's perspective. It is the state government's perspective. And so when the Senate looks at a treaty, they all come together and say, yeah, let's agree to give these people inheritance rights, and we will make it binding through this treaty. At that point, all the courts in the United States, all the courts of Tennessee, when the statute or when Congress writes a law based on that treaty and it comes up a probate issue and that person and their citizenship are fall within that particular treaty, then of course they get inheritance rights. So look at this statement: invalidating a state probate statute prohibiting inheritance by certain non-resident aliens as unconstitutional intrusion by state into the field of foreign affairs. Folks, it wasn't just some club in Austria that decided to get together and have a little warm and fuzzy feeling session, exhorting one another to love and good works. It was based on law and treaty. Very powerful stuff. So this is what was cited, completely off point, completely out of context by the Attorney General. As the United States Supreme Court has explained, this court case majority relied on statements in a number of previous cases open to the reading that state action with more than incidental effect on foreign affairs is preempted, even absent any affirmative federal activity in the subject area of state law. And again, that was completely ambiguous. And I need to narrow it down here. What's the point? And again, I could cite these statutes. There were several things that were cited by the Attorney General's opinion off point. A little club, the OSCE, who met together in Austria with great intentions and great moral imperative, has no authority to do anything in the United States. In fact, they probably have to get somebody to bend over backwards to give them a visa to come here for this particular thing because it is not binding in law. It would be one thing if the Attorney General said, hey, listen, guys, on the basis of the way you framed this bill, citing UN observers, these aren't even UN observers. Okay, yeah, it's endorsed by the UN. They think it's a great idea. They like that little club, but it has no substance as law. It if the Attorney General had said, you know, your laws protecting how your elections are held can expressly say that we're going to limit observers to the following thing for the following reasons. And those people that are allowed to be there are limited to the following people. One of the things in the elections in Tennessee on the list, the legislature has determined that they're allowing the press, the United States press, to observe elections. They can set the rules to how far away these people can be. They can be in the polling place, but what are they allowed to do? They're free to do that now. In fact, if the OSCE wants to, they can send in a reporter. They could be claimed as being the press. I mean, there's ways that they can observe these things, but what if the press wants to get in and be there right when people are counting things? Tennessee has the power to say, no, you can stay out. You can observe how we treat people when they come in. You can do all these things, but that's as far as you can go. The Tennessee still has the power to do that. But what if a foreign club wants it to be different? What if they want to come in and observe Chad counting? Essentially, what the Attorney General's opinion is, they're free to do what they want because they're foreign and the United States likes foreign agreements. They didn't cite, Attorney General didn't cite any United States Congress bill or act or law, he didn't cite one law of Congress that has expressly at all even intimated of some agreement that there would be observers in state elections. It's not anywhere in his opinion. So I'm disturbed by it. And I know, I guess I've gone on a little bit too. Maybe some people say, well, talk about something else. Speak comfort to me, Jacob. But this is what popped up today. So what we're going to try to do, and again, sometimes it's a little bit, you burn some brain calories. Well, just think, you got to sit in your car as you're driving on the road and got to burn some calories. What I'm going to do is anything that we're going to talk about in this radio program, one of the things of our service to you is to raise a red flag. One, I would say to your representative, don't just lean on an attorney general opinion, scrutinize that opinion and use your own motivation, your own ambition to uphold the Constitution of Tennessee. That is your ambition. Your ambition is to protect the life, liberty, and property of Tennessee, of the people of Tennessee. And in doing so, one of the mechanisms is to uphold the Tennessee and United States constitutions. Those things are there as the procedural manual, right? If everybody wants to get along in the game of Monopoly, you're going to have to read the rules. Now, if there's something not in the rules that the rules are indifferent to, you guys can make an agreement together whether or not you're going to pay your taxes to free parking and then collect it if you land on it. Well, that's your prerogative. But if it's controlled by the rules of the game, somebody in their sound mind put together those rules of the game so that when we would get in conflict, when we had competing wants, desires, fears, that we would just cool down and look to the rule book, stick to the rule book, and you know what? Watch what peace ensues. So again, I don't know. I would say too, when I looked at House Bill 0589, I saw it as a dangerous innovation. I thought that would be um, probably there's a better approach to it. One is to review what laws are already there and what they're doing, and then maybe even trim up and amend if there's a particular fear you have that's not covered by the law that is already in effect. Then very carefully look at it and say, is there some other nuance we need to put in the current law that would give an awareness of the opinion? In fact, you come up with a Tennessee opinion that you would not want anybody foreign to be interfering or influencing your elections, and say the reason why, and then say the specific procedure that somebody will carry out, what their either ministerial authority is or discretionary authority, and very carefully carve that out. That's what I would say with regard to House Bill 0589. But that's not the approach of the Attorney General. When I saw what the Attorney General said, I realized there's a grave danger to Tennessee. And I've seen it before, Senate Bill 3, where we have this fear. There's even put in the Senate bill, if this bill to change the name to Veterans Memorial Highway is not an offense to somebody in a federal benefit program, then we will proceed. That's a spiritual issue. That's a spiritual, subliminal, sublime influence. What else could be influencing that? It's fear. I mean, so that's my question. If you got a question or comment, of course, give me a call, 888-248-2046. At the end of our discussion yesterday, I talked about a story where I needed $9,000. I had a need. My daughter needed to be walking into college with $9,000. We needed to pay up that's what was remaining on to pay for the first semester. You had to have the first semester paid for, or if she walked into school, they'd send her home. She had some academic scholarships, she had sports scholarships, she had a particular scholarship program that was very highly coveted that she had. So it reduced what would have been about $24,000 down to about per year, to really about 18,000 per year. So it wasn't a huge amount of scholarships. But so we needed to come up with $9,000, and we didn't have it. But I had it. I was sitting on a motorhome that I intended to sell. And of course I had a need, and I was stressing. I said, Lord, how am I going to meet this need? Should I sell this? Should I borrow money? What should I do? And I understood that what I was not doing was resting. Just do each day, seek, what the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given as well. So I knew that day I was supposed to be not worrying about anything, but just seeking his righteousness. And again, what happened when somebody walked up to me the very next day and told me that God told him I had a need. It was financial, had to do with there's an automobile involved in here somewhere. I don't really understand, but you have a financial need. And you're supposed to tell me what it is, because I'm going to meet it. And so, of course, a check for $9,000 was written after me explaining a very long story that you haven't heard. So our freedom comes in proportion to our faith. Are we willing to put our wants, fears, and desires to bed just for a while? Just let them rest. And let's consider that maybe there's a plan from our Creator that will really ultimately save us. David Allen Carmichael, Preservative Talk Radio, preservativetalkradio.com.